Hello everyone, my name is Prince Boss, and I got a confession to make. That's right, there is something wrong. But last time we left off, we all left off, actually, just about to start the first part of the trial. That was the plan. Yesterday. And it did go as I thought it would. Unfortunately, my editing software decided to be a little piece of shit. And I lost all that footage, and I saved over the save file, which I guess is now something I learned to not do. So, yeah, you guys are kind of out of luck when it comes to redoing the first part of this trial. So, to make it up to you guys, I will summarize it for you as best as I can and as much as I can remember. This trial, the first part of the trial, did not go in our favor at all. But then again, when does it ever? We were on the back foot the entire first half. Now we are kind of taking an advantage, but I'll get to that in just a minute. So, our best friend, our prosecuting buddy and pal, the Grim, or the Reaper of the Bailey. I don't like him. But we have to deal with it for now. I'm sorry for the pauses. I'm having a headache right now. And I decided what better way for me to fight off a headache than to play a game that requires me to do a lot of thinking and voice act and speak loudly enough for the mic to hear. I don't know why I'm doing this with my life. I lost an hour and 50 minutes of footage. So let me just get back to the making it up to you guys part. Mr. Soseki was basically seen as guilty by every single member of the jury before even evidence was shown, and the scales were tipped already. So we had to do an early summation examination after our first witness, Inspector Gregson, came out. That solidified the jury's vote for guilty. We went out, pointed fingers, accused people, and pitted them against each other. And that was the first summation examination. Then, God damn it. Then, we figured out that there were the witnesses. The two that came up and walked and talked and basically, well, yeah. Oh, also, forgot to mention, one of the members of the jury is Mrs. Garadeb. That's right. Is Mr. Garadeb's quote-unquote maid, but also wife. And we pointed that out later on in the trial, but she got super mad. And nobody really cared to listen to us at that point. Now, let's just say that the prosecution, Mr. Bailey guy, I'm just going to call him Mr. Bailey, he turned the tables on us once again by bringing in two witnesses that were at the scene of the crime and supposedly saw Mr. Soseki commit murder. We tried our best to point out any flaws, and that didn't go our way at all. Now, at that point, it was kind of becoming increasingly sure that we were going to lose this trial. Because of this, the entire jury again voted guilty. But we have one more chance to pull forth another trial to continue. That's right, we're starting this episode off with a summation examination. So, oh, also, forgot to mention, one of the books that the victim had on them when they died was one of Mr. Garadeb's books. So, one of the things that we pointed out was that because she had the book in her hands, is that there was an open window outside Mr. Garadeb's house, but everyone was like, no, it's in the winter, why would anyone have the fucking window open? So, that's where we are at right now. So let's just get started with the beautiful summation, examination, trial part 2. I'm sorry that you guys didn't get to see the first part, but maybe it's a good thing you didn't. It was very, choppy. Let's get started. A lot of whining, too. I have considered the defense counsel's request for a further summation examination of the jury, and I have determined that the court must uphold the defense's judicial right to this procedure. So, counsel, you will now proceed with your second summation examination. I presume the jury is ready, Mr. Foreman. We are, my lord. Very good. In that case, I must ask each of you now to state clearly and concisely for the court the grounds on which you find the defendant guilty of this crime. Judicial findings. The jurors' contentions. The accused left behind evidence at the scene, didn't he? Those 3 books of his. If there was some novel alternative explanation about how the victim was stabbed, I might reconsider. Even if the woman was throwing books, it can't be related to this crime if the window was closed, can it? Sorry about that, guys. Hold up. Getting text from my dad. Probably should pause this shit, but apparently I'm too stupid to realize that. Am I? Of course I am. Well, get that. There we go. Oh, I'm an idiot. I can't believe I didn't pause this part, and you guys had to hear me talk. It's super fun. You guys already... Oh, this recording session's already going super swell, isn't it? Dearie mate, you were doing a little book, hardly life-threatening, even if with a direct hit. Look, I just want to get this over with. If I don't bring home some pay tonight, I'll be in a titty bit of trouble. Don't you think of it? We had a fire at home a while ago. He gave me the sneezes. Yes. Okay. I was about to be, woo! Dr. Hart. If you don't know who I'm talking about, good for you. Also, if you don't know who I'm talking about, please, watch or play Justice for All. Ace Attorney Justice for All. It's a good game. I promise you. Yes. Considerably most tangible arguments... Okay. Arguments from all members of the jury this time around, it seems. With one notable exception, of course. Of course. My learned student friend was unable to find fault in the previous witness testimony. So the court must accept the fact that it was indeed the accused seen fleeing from the scene. And moreover... Oh boy. No one else was even at the scene to commit the crime. Yet, if the eyewitnesses are correct, it would seem as if the conclusion is somewhat set in stone. I fail to see how it can be argued any other way. Sorry about that, guys. I had to take a call. That was from my dad. So, back. That means, I'm afraid, that during the summation examination, it's essential that you establish some other tangible explanation for the facts. But how? What would even constitute a tangible explanation here? Isn't it obvious? Who stabbed the woman, and how? Those two details are all you need to provide. Simply give us a name and a method by which the attack was conducted. And there I was thinking this might be hard. But Miss Naruhodo, you have to do it. Otherwise this really will be where the trial ends. Ugh, no pressure then. That's quite enough preamble. Proceed with the summation examination, please. I presume you are prepared, Counselor. Oh, yes, my lord. All right, Ryunosuke, focus your mind now. Idiot sandwich time. Clearly, the key to the summation examination is going to be juror number 4, the maid, or should I say, Mrs. Garadeb? We have a book that disappeared from the Garadeb's house on the evening of the incident, and the 4th book found the victim's hand. There must be a way to link the two. Yes, that's what we have to find. Using every technique I've learned in my short career so far. Whatever it takes. Don't forget to keep an eye on Mrs. Garadeb and how she reacts, even to the things other people say. Alright. The defense's rebuttal. Alright. So. Why is juror number 6 so fucking dumb right now? I really want to know. Or is it 5 or 6? Look, I just want to get this over with. If you don't bring me home, it's okay.
Hold it!
You just want to get this over with? How can you sit there and say something like that? A man's future is at stake here. Well, him and me both dead, like I said before. What? I told you already, I'm a day laborer on island. If I don't bring home some red A's with me tonight, you'll find me floating face down in the Thames tomorrow morning. What? You heard me. My missus isn't one to mess about, you know. She can be fierce, believe you me. There we go. Another shining example of marital bliss, then. A situation like this cropped up the other day. It was, you know, it's funny, because I can't quite remember. Sorry? I was too frightened. That's the thing. I must have blocked it out. Helpful. I wonder if Mr. B will ever be dragged into the Thames by his scarf. Don't even go there, Mrs. Sato. There must be some way to jog his memory about this. Come to think of it, I had a fire at home a while ago. Gave me the sneezes.
Hold it!
You had a fire? Does that have anything to do with your decision about the defendant's culpability in this case? Hey, what's that? You don't have to speak up, lad. Could you tell us more about that fire? It was last winter. My grandchildren baked me a lovely cake on my birthday. That's 75 candles on the top, it did. What a sight to behold it was. You put candles on a cake? Was it some kind of devil worship? Of course not. It was an angel cake. To celebrate my birthday, obviously. It seems that it's a common custom here in Great Britain, Miss Naruhodo. I cannot speak. Anyway, I mustered all of my puff to blow them out. Only I must have blown wrong somehow. The flames didn't go out. The candles went flying all over the room. The furniture caught everything and went up. The whole place filled with smoke. Definitely sounds like devil worship to me. And by the sneezes, I presume you mean a cold. But how did you catch a cold from a fire? What a fiasco it was. The grandchildren, bless them, threw water all over me as they tried to put out the flames. And then, because the whole room was filled up with smoke, of course, they had to open all the windows to clear it. the windows. The biting winter rushed all over me like the devil dancing on my grave, it did. I caught a terrible cold from it. It put me in hospital for a while. I won't forget that birthday in a hurry. I knew it was devil worship all along. Something about this old man's story is playing in my mind for some reason. We need to demonstrate who, apart from Mr. Natsumi, could have attacked the young woman on the street. As well as he or she could have done it. Yes, but once again, the jurors' statements are full of personal prejudice. A lot of them seem convinced they're right, even in the face of logical arguments to the contrary. I think you're gonna need to pit them against each other to force them to accept an alternative explanation. Yes. I don't necessarily need to find contradictions between their assertions. Just a connection might do the trick. Alright, I'll see what I can do. If anything stands out, I'll go in for a strike. That's the spirit. So, juror number 3, what do you say? Oh, no, go back. Even if the woman was throwing books can't be related to this crime, the window is closed. What if the building was on fire? Yeah.
Objection!
These two jurors' statements are clearly contradict one another. How exactly, counsel? Don't point at me again. I told you it wasn't me. What's that you say? Speak up, lad, speak up. Juror number 3, do you see? Oh, me? See what, sir? Did you hear juror number 6's account for his birthday celebrations last year? It seems, despite being a Londoner, he once opened his windows in the middle of winter. Oh, well, yes, of course. Because it was an emergency. I mean, obviously, if the room was filled with smoke from the fire, then you'd be mad not to open the... Oh! Exactly. On the day in question, at the time of the incident, there was a fire in the Garadip household. And Mr. Garadip had the following to say about it. The whole place filled with smoke. Oh, my hat! Oh.
Excuse me!
Juror number 4, do you have something to say about that? Mrs. Garadip!
How dare he, me? What's the meaning of this? How dare you imply that I'm hiding who I really am?
It's imperative that you confirm something for the court. So please, it's time to drop the pretense now.
What is it?
When the fire started in your house that day, did you or your husband open the window?
What? I beg your pardon? What are you insinuating?
The room would have been thick with smoke after the carpet and bookcase caught fire as they did. In a situation like that, it's inconceivable that you wouldn't have opened the window.
And what if we did? Oh, all right then. Yes, you're right. My husband was frantically trying to open the window. Which can't have been easy.
Oh, well, shit. Even though your house was on fire?
Oh, you never stop going until the anger subsides. It would be terribly bad for the nerves to do so otherwise.
Of course. I should have realized.
That's a significant step forward, Miss Naruhodo. You've managed to establish that the window was open. We simply must have that added to Mrs. Garadip's formal statement. Now you mention it, yes, the window was open at the time. Okay.
Alright.
Hold it!
The 4th book found at the scene of the crime shows very obvious signs of fire damage. And the title of the book is The Lion's Pride. The same title, in fact, as the book that Mr. Garadip told us that you had been reading.
Well, I really couldn't say.
On the day in question, did you or did you not throw at your husband? the copy of The Lion's Pride that he had been reading.
I did. It was the first thing I could lay my hands on, so I hurled it straight at him. And now you come to mention it, yes. He was rather enjoying reading it, you're right.
Why did you not reveal this information to the court from the outset?
Because I couldn't, you insolent little man. I didn't remember. At times like that, you pick up and throw whatever you can lay your hands on. As well, you know.
I really don't.
I barely noticed I was carrying a
Oh, my.
much less the title of it.
Excuse me.
What is it, juror number 5?
You know something? I remember what it was. That memory I blocked out.
Ah.
It was listening to what the granny was saying. Brought it all flooding back.
Who are you calling a granny, you cheeky devil? I'm Mrs. Garrett-Dabble, the maid. I'll have you know.
The man doesn't even flinch. Please tell me that's not because he's so used to being hit all the time.
It was about 2 weeks ago now. I just got back home after work, put my hand in my pocket for the wages I just earned that day, and I nearly died. There was a hole. Every last penny had dropped out.
Oh dear, what a disaster.
You haven't heard the half of it, boy.
Oh?
The wife was cutting up some chicken at the time. I could hardly get the words out, but I told her straight. I lost the day's wages, love. Next thing I knew, the blade was whistling past my ear. Stuck into the wall next to me, it did. Now an inch deep.
No words. Just terror.
I could smell it then, you know. That god-awful stench of the Thames. I was sure I was going to end up face down in the muddy bunks that night, I can tell you. Now, that's a real disaster, isn't it?
I'll never use the word lightly again.
Anyway, the point I was trying to make is when women lose their rag, they'll throw anything at you. Knives, hatchets, hammers, you name it.
Mr. Naruhodo, you mustn't think all women are so short-tempered and unrefined.
No, I wasn't thinking that.
Throwing household objects at people is, well, it's so uncivilized. At least attack with honor, using a bow or the like.
What? Attack? Who are you going to attack?
Never mind. Anyway, this man's words could be rather significant, I think.
Alright, we'll come back to the bow and arrow thing later. If I dare. What did number 2 say? Oh. Hello? The kitchen knife really brought that home to me. If there's some novel alternative...
Objection!
Those two statements clearly have a deeply significant connection.
Good grief! You mean they don't contradict each other? Explain, counsel, at once.
Juror number 2, do you think perhaps that this could be one such novel alternative?
Oh my, whatever do you mean?
An alternative explanation as to how the victim was stabbed in the back.
What are you talking about?
We've demonstrated that the 4th book, The Lion's Pride, that was found at the scene of the crime, originated in Mr. Garadev's home on the top floor of his house. Therefore, it's equally possible that some other object besides the book could have found its way from the Garadev household to the street below.
What's that now?
After all, Mrs. Garadev could have thrown any number of different objects at her husband. Isn't that right, juror number 4?
What are you insinuating now, you little beanpole?
I'm beginning to think that, ever since the true origins of this book came to light, Perhaps she's had a feeling this might be what happened.
Now you listen here, you Eastern Gala. As the foreman of this jury, I demand a straight answer. You give us this yarn about some other object making its way out of the house. But what? What was it?
I'm really taking a big gamble here. That was a bold accusation to make, but I haven't any real evidence to back it up. But I'm certain that at the very least this warrants further investigation. Alright, Mr. Foreman, I'll try to explain the defense's theory. The other object that found its way from the Geradev household to the scene of the crime was, I'm guessing, the jackknife. It has to be the jackknife. Wait a minute. Gold back, gold handle, wood. Oh shit. Hello.
Take that!
Juror number 4, Mrs. Geradev.
What now?
I must apologize in advance for this, but I need you to confirm something else for the court. This knife. Have you ever seen this knife before?
Oh! Good Lord, Counsel, what on earth are you doing? That's the weapon that was lodged in the victim's back, man.
My lord, remember that when the victim was attacked, Mr. and Mrs. Geradev were in the throes of an argument. Mrs. Geradev was hurling anything she could at her husband, who'd been backed up against the window. A window that had been opened to clear the smoke, and through which a book sailed to land at the crime scene.
You can't seriously believe that. The book was found in the victim's grasp.
Are you saying that when it flew out the window and across the street to land neatly in her hand?
Well, even my missus hadn't got a name like that.
Yes, I admit there are many details we don't yet understand. But that's the point. That's precisely why we must not allow this trial to end. Not right now.
Oh my!
Eh. Mrs. Geradev, your answer, please. Have you seen this knife before or not?
Oh! Ah!
Uh-oh. Who said that? Lord.
I wish to change my decision. I'm a woman of my word, after all.
Thank you, madam.
Yes, I agree. I certainly didn't see this coming, but I just don't think it would be right for this trial to come to an end now with so many unanswered questions.
Mr. Foreman!
I have to agree. Not that I think the granny didn't mind.
Yes, you know what? I'm not quite happy about this at the moment either.
Altogether now, laddies and gents.
Woo! We've tipped the scales once again. We did it.
Oh, congratulations, Mr. Naruhodo. So, as a result of the defense's summation examination, a number of jurors' leanings have changed. 2 jurors called guilty, against 4 now calling innocent. Accordingly, the opinion of this court is divided. And this trial will continue.
We did it. All right.
Now then, Lord Vangitis, how does the prosecution wish to proceed?
Oh, come on. That's a waste of wine. This trial is rapidly descending into a farce. Oh, well, at least you drank some. Like a corked wine, the first few sips are bitter enough. And here's the waste. But what follows is so repugnant, it's good for nothing, save the gutter.
If I may, Lord Vangitis, The defense has just put forward a credible alternative explanation for what had happened.
Incredible. Is that your considered opinion, Mr. Foreman? The defense's argument is a joke to which I merely know how to respond.
I didn't mean to click.
That you must all familiarize yourselves better with the relative positions of those places being discussed.
What do you mean by that? What's this angle this time? It should already be more than apparent that between the crime scene and the Garadev household... Oh, sorry, that's physics.
Runs a rather wide street, Briar Road. Which means that the distance from the Garadev's house to the scene is some, yes, 15 yards. Let me see, 15 yards. That's around 14 meters.
14 meters? Oh, that's a little farther than I'd imagined. Also, why are they using the imperial system? This is Great Britain. They use metric.
And as you ladies and gentlemen of the jury rightly noted as having portentous significance, the fourth book was found in the victim's clutches. In other words, the smoldering book, wantonly hurled by the lady of the house, traveled some 15 yards to land on the opposite side of the road, neatly between the collapsed victim's fingers and thumb. Is that your final conclusion, my learned and deluded friend? And did the jackknife follow a near identical trajectory to plunge into the middle of the victim's back? This fantasy is somewhat stretching the notion of having a bad day for the victim, I think.
Even those pathetic serialized detective stories have more believable plots.
Ah! There's nothing I can say to that.
That prosecutor loves the sound of his own voice.
Mrs. Sato!
Serialized detective stories are pathetic, are they? How dare he? Maybe let's pick our battles here. My lord, might I be allowed to speak? As judicial assistant, you may speak for the defense, yes. Go ahead. The prosecution may consider the idea a fantasy, but what the defense has postulated was believable enough to persuade the jury to change its leaning. And as such, the court has a duty to explore this alternative explanation as thoroughly as possible. To that end, juror number 4, Miss Joan Garrigan, must be called to testify and submit to cross-examination. Saints alive! Cross-examination of a juror? Order! 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 Well, this is highly irregular. This is unprecedented for a member of the jury to be summoned us to the witness stand.
Objection!
Oh boy.
And unnecessary.
Lord Van Zykes?
There are already witnesses in the stand whose testimony the defense may further cross-examine. If my learned friend's farcical theory has any truth in it, then both a burning book and a jackknife must have flown through the sky before the couple's eyes. And we must assume that they would be able to testify accordingly. What say you, witnesses?
Forgot to tell you about these guys. Yeah, these are the witnesses that saw, quote-unquote, saw the murder happen.
Yes, sir. Constable Rolling reported for duty, sir.
Well, good morning, officer.
Sorry for dozing until now. Sir, I haven't slept for a month on account of a villain who's appeared on my beats.
Oh, they're so heroic, these London bobbies.
Patricia, my darling, I've been neglecting you, but no more.
Oh, Rowie, my hero. You make me swoon.
I feel like I'm about to gag.
Very well. I hereby reject the defense's request. Oh. and order the witnesses in the stand to testify again. State forthwith before the court any details pertaining to the defense's alternative explanation of events.
Yes, sir.
Witness testimony! Fun. Here we go.
This case has nothing to do with Mr. and Mrs. Garrideb. Believe me, a blood and Bobby's good for his word. You see, sir, the windows on the top floor of the Garrideb house are top-hinged casements.
Obviously, if anything had been thrown out of the window, we would have seen. I did leave the scene to go fetch help, but my trusty Raleigh was there to make sure nothing was disturbed.
I did take my eye off the crime scene for one moment, sir. Nothing strange to report on that front, sir.
I see.
Well, this is quite startling. Top-hinged casement windows.
That detail is not in the police report, Constable.
Yes, sorry about that. I must have been a little drowsy.
You cannot excuse your sins with drowsiness every time, Constable.
No, sir.
Sorry, but what exactly is a top-hinged casement window? And you cannot excuse your ignorance with such tirade remarks, my learned friend. Of course. Sorry.
I found it, Miss Naruhodo. Cast your mind back to the windows in Mr. and Mrs. Garrideb's home.
Alright, I'll try.
So the window opens in order to allow air to circulate inside the home. But as its top-hinged casement window, it swings open along the upper edge, you see.
I'm glad you've rectified your ignorance. Casement window's most prominent feature is its stay, a metal bar which preserves the window from being opened beyond a certain amount. It prevents it opening? That's all news to me.
Absolutely correct, sir. In other words, if a book or knife would have been thrown through the open window, it would have clattered against the pane and fallen straight down to the pavement below.
No. You see the problem then. Good, your education of windows is complete. There was never any possibility of either a book or the knife traveling 15 yards over the road. That is, unless the window pane had been shattered, something we've discounted already. That can't be!
Did you see that, Rolly? That young Japanese man just collapsed in agony.
Oh, yes, my darling, I saw it. I saw how he crumbled before me.
Alright, I still have the right to cross-examine you.
Oh, Rolly, you're so strong.
I'm gonna gag. How is this happening? I haven't even started the cross-examination yet, and already my argument's been destroyed.
Marshal, if you could drag yourself upright again, the court awaits your cross-examination.
My lord. Oh, good. Another desperate situation. Welcome to your timeline. Alright, here we go. How do you know that?
Hold it!
How can you say that for certain?
Very good question, sir.
The answer is this.
It has the noble founding principles of the force written on it as a reminder to us policemen of our sworn duty.
He showed us that before, didn't he?
Did he? I can't say I remember.
Control the streets of London town and uphold the peace of common man. That's what the job's all about.
And that is why I can stand here today beside my long-suffering wife and tell you that Bobby's good for his word. While rubbing my tired eyes admittedly. Son.
Oh, Rolly, you're so manly.
Of course I am, my darling Patricia. Oh, Pat.
Oh, Rolly.
I feel you. No, none of this is what I meant. I meant, how can you say for certain that this case has nothing to do with Mr. or Mrs. Garrett?
Ah, I see, sir. You should have said so earlier, sir.
Yes, well, so could you answer the question? That was a waste of time.
Absolutely, sir. I will answer that to my fullest of my ability, sir. There's a surprising reason why Mr. and Mrs. Garrett's domestic dispute can't be related to this case. But before I get into that, sir, just one thing.
Yes.
I'd very much like you and all your countrymen to understand the great British institution of Scotland Yard. So I hope you'll take back some tales of us London bobbies and how we uphold our guiding principles.
I wasn't planning on going back just yet. I've only just arrived here.
So to that end, sir, I'd be happy to lend you my warrant card for your pursuit. But I must warn you, you won't be able to get through it without shedding a few tears.
Thank you. I'll try. Small following wallet that identifies London Bobbies and contains the rules of conduct.
See, sir, the windows on the top floor of the Garrett house are top hinge casements.
Hold it!
By which you mean they don't open fully, is that correct?
Yes, sir. They're just there to allow a bit of air through the house, see? So they're restricted as to how much they open.
And therefore, anything thrown out the window from inside the room will simply strike the pane and fall to the street directly below. For clarity, allow me to mark the map. Here is the location where objects would have fallen. Yes, directly opposite the scene of the crime, on the other side of the rather wide road. Would it have been so hard for somebody to mention this top hinge case thing before? Well, I have another question for you, Constable.
Yeah, what would that be, sir?
How do you even know? Why would you have any idea what sort of windows Mr. and Mrs. Garrett's house is furnished with?
Well, sir, that's very simple. You see, I helped with the investigation yesterday.
You say something?
Excuse me!
Do you have something to add, Mrs. B? Sorry? You look, well, delighted. Is there some particular reason for that? Oh, I was just remembering. That's all. We really were so lucky. Lucky? What do you mean? Well, of course, I feel terrible for the poor woman who was attacked. Don't misunderstand me, please. But we were just so lucky it didn't happen on Rolly's beat. It was so close, you see. Oh, I hadn't realized. Oh yes, that street, Briar Road. That's the boundary between Rolly's beat and the next one. Isn't that right, my love? Constable Beat!
Oh, yes, that's right. That's the reason I was helping out with interviewing the occupants of the Garrett F. household yesterday. Their house is on my beat, you see. So,
that really was cutting it close then. Constable, I wonder if you could clarify something. The Garrett F. household is on your beat. Does that mean that the pavement next to it is as well?
Outside Mr. Garrett F.'s house? Yes, ma'am. Pavement on the side of the road is part of my beat.
I see. I was unaware of that. Just think, if the woman had been attacked just on the other side of Briar Road, we would have never have been able to go for that meal to celebrate our wedding anniversary. That's kind of fucking petty. But that's the life of a Bobby, after all. Extraordinary people, the Bobbies, tirelessly working for the benefit of all Londoners.
You know what I think? I think it was the good Lord's way of rewarding my Rolly for all his hard work. Don't you think so, my darling?
Must be it, Pat, my love. Must be it.
I think perhaps we should make sure we have that information officially on record.
Leave it to me, Mr. Nawahodo. I'll take care of it immediately.
I see. Hold up. And why was he the reporting officer? Interesting.
And now it's my turn, I think.
Wait, what? Yeah. Obviously, if anything had been thrown out the window, we would have seen it.
Hold it!
But according to my notes here, the sun had gone down already and it was dark.
Oh, but Rolly and I were strolling along, gazing at the night sky and looking for our lucky star.
Sorry?
The star that will guide us to eternal happiness.
Can it guide you to answer the question?
If a flaming book had cut across the sky in front of us, it would have lit up like a shooting star.
And if I'd seen the shooting star, I would have made a wish upon it. But Rolly being an inspector, I would have said 3 times at least.
Of course, but with the smog and everything, we couldn't naturally see any stars.
In short, are you trying to say that neither a book nor a knife crossed the sky before you?
Yes, sir. That is correct, sir. As sure as the night sky in London is starless, sir.
It certainly seems like they're telling the truth.
And then we saw the poor woman fall to the ground, so we ran over to help her.
Hold it!
Yes, you said that you went to a nearby police box to fetch another officer. Is that right?
That's right, yes. If it had been on Rolly's beat, I would have known exactly where I was going, of course.
Don't feel bad, my love. Can't be expected to know the location of every police box on every beat.
So Rolly told me the way. Only, I sorta got lost. A little lost on the way.
Trisha, my darling, that's why I love you. Terrible sense of direction, and direction is bewitching me. Oh, Pat.
Oh, Rolly.
Oh, jeez. Oh, please!
So, I suppose I was gone for about 15 minutes. But like I said, my Rolly was at the scene the whole time, making sure nothing was disturbed.
I was off duty at the time, of course. But a true Bobby is never really off duty, sir.
Oh, you did.
Hold it!
Nothing to report.
That's correct, sir. I had my eyes wide open the entire time. Never looked away for a second. No one else approached the scene, and nothing was removed from it. I can swear to that on the yard's honest, sir.
Really? That seems a little strange.
Beg your pardon, sir. Strange, sir. Seems altogether regular to me.
This burnt copy of The Lion's Pride was originally in the Garadev household. So the question remains, how did it find its way into the hand of the victim? Can you shed any light on that, seeing as how you were at the scene of the crime the entire time?
Aha! Could be a different copy, sir. One that just happened to be burned as well.
Even if that were possible, why would the victim have been gripping a book that was in her hand? As we can see from this photograph, man, she had a bag over her shoulder.
Well, sir, that book was in the lady's hand from the moment we arrived on the scene.
Is that so? There's something about this statement that's not sitting right with me. The two mysteries of how that knife ended up in her back and how the book ended up in her hand. There must be some common thread between them. Can I ask you something? Please, Mr. Lawyer, sir. Oh, yes, of course. What is it? You're doubting us, aren't you? I can tell. What? I wasn't really, what's she doing? Please, just because I'm a woman, it doesn't make my testimony any less valuable. I did not say that. You might just see me as the wife of a policeman, but I'm a woman of my word, I am. I really don't remember ever suggesting that I doubted you. No excuses. I don't want to hear it. My voice will be heard. My lord, you'll let me speak, won't you? Yes, Mrs. B. I'll allow you to supplement your testimony if you so desire. Sometimes, the path of least resistance is the sage one. That was a very loud matter. Muttered. I heard that. A Japanese man thinks a policeman's wife's word counts for nothing, does he? I did not say that. Well, watch out, sir. I might let you get away with something like that, but my Rolly won't. Duly noted, Mrs. Beat. Please, I humbly ask you to continue. What could she possibly be about to say, I wonder? I knew what I saw. My eyes never let me down. My sense of direction is a little off sometimes.
Hold it!
Mrs. B, nobody's questioning what you told. I saw what I did that evening. I clearly saw it. That little Eastern man with the whiskers and the funny curved back slinking away from the scene. Huh. And I know what I didn't see as well. I didn't see any flaming books or knives flying through the sky. All very clear. You also mentioned something about having a poor sense of direction. Oh, yes, well, that's a little embarrassing, really. I'm always ending up at the wrong place when I've made arrangements to meet Rolly. He gets ever so cross.
Excuse me!
Got something to say, Rolly? Constable Beat! Is there a problem?
No, sir. No problem, sir.
Did your wife's remark just now bring something to mind, perhaps?
Oh, well, in a way, sir. Yes, sir. I was just remembering that the same thing happened that evening, is all.
You mean Mrs. Beats lost her way on the night of the incident?
Well, you see, I sent her off to find a police box in the next beat over from mine. She was gone a fair bit longer than what I was expecting. I thought she'd be back inside 10 minutes, but my darling was gone for a good 15.
Oh, Rolly, you're such a tease. But the reason I was so long was because of the bouquet, silly.
The bouquet?
Sorry, what bouquet are you talking about? Oh, it was a present for our wedding anniversary. Rolly's so romantic. He saved up for it with farthings and halfpennies he found in the gutter while doing his rounds. Yes, how romantic. I'd forgotten all about it until just now. Had you, my darling?
Yes. But that was just between us. No talking about it to anyone else, darling. You have to promise.
Really? Oh. What was that all about? Constable B looked very obviously troubled during that exchange. I'm afraid I can't offer any useful insight, Miss Naruhodo. But I'm quite sure of one thing. We have to ask Mrs. Beat about the bouquet. Mrs. Beat, this bouquet you just mentioned. I'd like you to add details about it to your testimony, please.
Oh, really? Yes, I'd love to.
I think he sees where this is going.
What happened was, I dropped my bouquet and ended up losing my way for a while.
Hold it!
You mean you dropped the bouquet at the scene of the crime? Yes, that's right. I was so upset. When we ran over and saw it was with a woman with a knife in her back. I was so shocked. I dropped the bouquet Raleigh gave me. It was in a dark spot where the streetlights weren't casting any light, so I didn't notice at first.
And then you went to the police box to report it to the policeman whose beat it was on.
Yes, and I came back to the scene together with the other constable, you see. That's when I spotted my bouquet again. But the funny thing was, when I went to pick it up, it was nowhere near the victim's body at all.
In case you need reminding, Mrs. Beat, the victim is not deceased.
I was all flustered for a moment before I heard a voice calling me from the other side of the road.
Your husband, presumably?
That's right, silly me had gone over to the wrong side of the street. Although, I'm gonna blame the bouquet this time. I can't think how it got there. I really can't.
So the bouquet somehow moved from one side of Briar Road to the opposite.
Curious indeed. Isn't it? But the worst of it is, I forgot to pick the bouquet up again when we left the scene. That beautiful rose Rolly bought me with that change from the gutter he spent so long collecting.
By bouquet, do you perhaps mean this sorry solitary rose?
Oh! Oh, yes, that's it! That's the bouquet Raleigh gave me for our anniversary, with old bits of change he found in the gutter.
Maybe just call it a rose. Herr Schwarzenegger, where did you come by this flower? According to the report by the police officer in charge of the crime scene investigation, it was found on the edge of the pavement in front of the Garadev household. In front of the Garadev's house? Although it wasn't noticed until the morning, as it lay where the street lamps cast no light. It was believed to be of no relevance to the case, since it was found on the opposite side of the thoroughfare.
Oh, thank you, sir, thank you. Can I have it back now, please?
No, I think for good measure, this rose should be added to the court record as evidence.
Oh. But it's a symbol of our love. I want it back after the trial. Do you hear me? I want it back.
Good grief. Rest assured that I shall do my very best not to forget, Mrs. Bate. I didn't take my eyes off the scene. Nothing strange to report. There was nothing strange.
Objection!
Alright, I think that's strange enough. You claimed, Constable Beat, there was nothing to report in the 15 or so minutes that you were guarding the scene. But that cannot be.
What do you mean to say?
In your testimony just now, Mrs. Beat, you explained to the court that when you arrived back at the scene of the crime with the policeman assigned to that beat, the bouquet you had dropped at the victim's side was no longer anywhere nearby.
Objection!
Yes, on the opposite side of Briar Road to where the victim was attacked. But considering the size of that meager bouquet, if a single sorry balloon can be so described, no doubt it was blown in the wind across the street, back into the gutter where it belongs.
Meager?
Objection!
But if that were the case, why did Constable Beat not testify to the fact?
No one else approached the scene. Nothing was removed from it. Constable Beat swore that on Skyland Yard's honor. Bouquet belonged to me. It had nothing to do with the case. That's why Rolly didn't mention it, I'm sure.
No, because sadly, it's not only your bouquet we're talking about here. More than one thing in this case is mysteriously the wrong way round.
What are you talking about?
Think about it. Besides Mrs. Beat's bouquet, there's Mr. Garadeb's book. Mr. Garadeb's copy of The Lion's Pride, which is thrown out the window by his wife, would have struck the pane of the casement window and landed here, on the west side of the street. And yet, it was actually found here, on the opposite side of the road in the victim's hand. Meanwhile, according to the testimony we've heard, Mrs. Beat's bouquet should have been dropped here at the scene of the crime, on the east side of the street. But in fact, it was actually found here, on the opposite side of the road, in front of Mr. and Mrs. Garadeb's house. There's no logical explanation for those things. Unless somebody deliberately moved them.
What are you trying to say? The way you're talking, it sounds like you think my Rolly's done something wrong. Don't you listen to a word that scrawny lawyer says? Whittering on about books and bouquets. Why should we care? It's nitpicking, that's what it is.
Oh, good. Mrs. Garadeb's come round. You might call it nitpicking, Mrs. Garadeb. But deliberately meddling with the scene of a crime is a criminal offense. It's called,
Tampering, Mr. Naruhodo.
But the person responsible for this tampering cannot admit to it. For a very subtle but compelling reason.
Objection!
Tampering? You've barely heard the term before. Tell us, my lord. Who could possibly have had cause to carry out such an elaborate deception? Yes, there is someone who tampered with the scene of the crime that evening. All the evidence and all the testimony points to that one particular person.
Counsel, I must demand that you substantiate this conjecture. Who are you saying is responsible for tampering with the scene of crime?
Well, no duh. The only person there that could have done it, Mr. Beat.
Take that!
Obviously, there's only one person it could have been. Constable Rolly Beat! It was you!
What? A policeman? A member of Scotland Yard? What nonsense! Why would my Rolly do something like that? There's no one straighter than my husband.
In both senses of the word.
No Bobby works more tirelessly for the people of London.
Mrs. Beat, you said in your testimony that your husband asked you to go to a nearby police box to fetch the officer on duty. The 15 minutes that you were absent from the scene is the only opportunity anyone had to tamper with it.
You're making it up. It's all nonsense. It's all lies. What about that Japanese man with whiskers? I bet it was him. He did.
Objection!
If that were true, Constable B would have seen him do it.
Oh. And forgive me for pointing it out, but when you dropped your bouquet, Mrs. Beach, it was after the defendant had fled the scene. Well...
Objection!
First you make accusations about the landlord and his wife, and now you incriminate a policeman as well. But your accusations lack one very important thing. Evidence. You claim the crime scene was tampered with, but there is only one reason anyone would commit such a reckless crime. To hide something.
That's right, he's right. But my husband and I just happened to be there, that's all. So why would we have anything to hide? It doesn't make sense.
You've offered no motive for this alleged tampering. And until you do, your accusations are nothing but empty threats. Constable B had a very good reason for wanting to tamper with the scene of the crime. That's the key to this entire affair.
Miss Naruhodo, have you managed to solve this mystery? Marshal, you have made a very serious accusation against a London police officer. If you are mistaken, I'm sure I need no point out that your reputation as a lawyer will be irrevocably damaged. With that stark warning in mind, you will now explain to the court the motive of this alleged tampering.
Yes, my lord. Constable Beat's motive for tampering with the scene of the crime was to hide when the bouquet fell? Or when the victim fell? It's not with the book, because we don't have any evidence to substantiate when the book fell. But... do you have any time? I mean, I don't have any evidence about when the bouquet fell either. The only possible thing would be the victim. Where the victim fell to the ground. That's what this Bobby had to cover up at all costs. What?
Where the victim fell? You mean where she was attacked?
No, not when, where, my bad.
What are you talking about? We told you at the very start, didn't we? On the pavement of Briar Road, we saw it happen, remember? He was right here, as if anyone didn't already know.
That's certainly what everybody has been led to believe. But in fact, that isn't where the victim was stabbed at all.
What? What?
I'm beginning to wonder where this tumultuous trial will end, Counsel. If that's your assertion, then the court is dying to know, my Nepalese friend. Where are you proposing the crime scene actually took place? This side of the road, right? I would say on this side of the road. Because that's the only possible location it could have happened.
Take that!
But that's...
On the opposite side of the road?
I don't understand.
On the evening in question, Mr. Garadeb's book fell directly down from the open window above, and your bouquet, Mrs. Beat, never moved at all. What did move was the scene of the crime itself.
Good gracious!
Objection!
Damn, this is getting spicy. Perhaps you haven't been listening to the ample testimony the court has heard. These witnesses both saw the moment the attack took place.
That's right. I saw it with my own eyes.
That was 5 o'clock in the evening and already dark. There was the typical London fog on the ground. When you saw the incident unfold and ran to the victim's aid, that was actually on the west side of Briar Road.
No, that's not true. It can't have been.
Constable Beat then arranged for you to be absent for a while by sending you for help. And during the 15 minutes you were away, he transplanted the crime scene. He moved all the things shown in this print, the victim herself, the 4 books. He moved everything, in fact, to the pavement on the east side of Briar Road.
Extraordinary.
But the constable overlooked one thing.
What? What did he overlook?
The bouquet, I presume. Exactly.
The prosecution told the court just a few minutes ago about the discovery of the rose bouquet. Lord Van Zyke said it wasn't noticed until the morning, as it lay where the street lamps cast no light.
Yes, it could have been seen in the dark, obviously. Which is why it was only the bouquet. Now, that was found in its original position, on the pavement on the west side of Briar Road. And that is the defense's theory about what really happened that evening. How do you respond? Constable Rolly Beat.
Well, I'm very sorry. I didn't mean to nod off again, but I haven't slept properly in a month. Did I miss anything important?
Oh, Rolly. It wasn't true, is it? What that lawyer said is all lies, isn't it? I know it is, because you're the most upstanding, righteous man I know.
I had a dream, a terrible dream. All the things I did that night. Everything. Come out. Everything. Exposed. Uh-oh. Only, it seems, it wasn't a dream at all.
Good golly! Order! 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 What on earth is the meaning of all this?
Also, I didn't read that card, did I? A policeman will strive to preserve the peace within his allotted beat. A patrolling officer is expected to walk 20 miles around his beat every day for a furtherance of community relations. Any crimes fall under the jurisdiction of the beat in which they are discovered. When a crime is discovered on his beat, a policeman must assist with initial investigations. He didn't want to do that, I assume.
What on earth is the meaning of all this? Oh, Rolly, why? Why would you do something like this? Moving a corpse is a criminal offense, isn't it?
Wishing the victim dead should be one too.
Constable, explain yourself. Why would you do this? As a respected member of Scotland Yard, your duty is to protect the good people of London Town.
I can't say, sir.
What?
I really am ever so sorry about all this. For damaging the Yard's reputation. For everything.
I have a possible explanation for why, on that particular evening, Constable B felt compelled to move the scene of the crime. I can think of one reason.
What?
How could you possibly know? You, foreigner, presuming to understand the mind of a Scotland Yard policeman.
And yet, no Vansitis. It is this foreigner who has uncovered the startling truth of the matter thus far. I believe it would be beneficial to the court to hear this extraordinary young lawyer's theory. Counsel for the defense, if you please.
Yes, my lord.
Now then, I think you had better show some evidence.
At once, my lord. England, Japan. It makes no difference where you come from. Human emotions are the same. And I think I have a fairly good idea of the feelings behind this man's actions.
What gives you away the motive for Constable B's unthinkable actions?
His warrant card.
Take that!
I realize that I'm a foreigner in this land, and I have only just arrived from Japan, which is why all this information about London's so-called bobbies is completely new to me. I've learned that though honorable, patrolling the beat is the most demanding work in the world, for example.
Keeping the peace, looking after the citizens on his beat, in all kinds of ways. There's no doubt that the young Bobby is charged with a great deal to do each day, certainly.
But for Constable Beat, the day in question was special.
Special? How?
On account of this bouquet, my lord.
Oh yes, it was our very first wedding anniversary.
Constable Beat had worked so hard to be able to afford this simple gift for his wife, and was so looking forward to taking her out for a celebratory meal. When he and Mrs. Beat stumbled upon a crime along Briar Road. when he saw that shadowy figure through the fog collapsed on the pavement ahead of them. What must have gone through the man's mind?
It was only that one particular day. I was looking forward to celebrating my wedding anniversary. It's just being put up with a lot, being married to a bobby like me. I wanted to show my dear wife how much I cared.
This is the warrant card that Constable Beat offered to lend to me earlier. Inside, among the rules for patrolling policemen, it says, when a crime is discovered on his beat, a policeman must assist with the initial investigations and help detectives. Aha! Constable Beat. Is that, or is it not, the reason why you moved the whole scene of the crime that day?
Yes. Everything you said. It's alright.
So that's it. It was all to do with the boundary of your beat.
Oh.
Exactly. To summarize, the incident actually occurred on Constable Beat's beat.
Good gracious! Constable, do you realize the gravity of what you have done?
It was the first time since I became a copper that I'd ever cursed God. Stand close to me, Pat. The criminal could be lurking somewhere. As we ran over to the scene, I had every intention of doing my duty as a police officer. We've got to report the situation as quickly as possible. Then it dawned on me. I realized where we were, where the victim was lying, and what that meant for me. When a crime is discovered on his beat, a policeman must assist with initial investigations and help detectives. Why here? Why did this have to happen here? And why tonight, of all nights? Why?
I asked that question a lot.
It's a copper's job to It's a copper's job to guard the scene of the crime, so I told Pat she had to go to the nearest police box and fetch whoever was on duty there. It was then when I opened my mouth to speak. It just came out. I couldn't believe the words that were coming out of my own mouth. This is the next beat to mine, Pat. So you'll have to go to the police box that covers it. Turn right along Mersham Street, and then...
And then what? Oh, he's crying. No!
I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
Oh, Constable.
I just wanted, just that one night, to take my Patricia out for dinner.
Oh, Roly.
Just that one night.
You knew that if the incident was on your beat, your evening of celebration would be ruined. And so you decided to move the entire crime scene outside your jurisdiction, just across the street to the east pavement of Briar Road, which falls under the neighboring beat's care.
You see, I thought, well, I was sure the victim was dead, you say. I beg your pardon. Oh, sorry. I beg your pardon.
Oh, of course he did. Otherwise, my Roly never would have left the poor woman in the freezing cold pavement.
Ah, I see you make me now. God got me back for my sins, didn't he? That's why I missed the roses I bought from Pat.
Oh no, Rolly. That was all my fault. I should never have dropped it in such a dark place. I'm so sorry, Rolly.
And can you tell us, Constable, how many books did you move from one side of the road to the other in total?
Oh, 4 it was. Yes, sir. Definitely. 4.
3 of them dropped by Mr. Natsumi, and the 4th being the one that fell from the window upstairs in the Garadev household, of course.
But what made you place that book in the victim's hand? When all the others were scattered haphazardly around, I mean.
Oh, well, sir. That's because that's how I found it.
How you found it? What do you mean?
When we first ran over to the scene, the victim was already holding the book. So,
Oh, I think I see. What happened. So, the book fell first. She went down to pick it up. And then, as she was bent over, the knife went into her back. That must be what happened.
So, when I moved everything, I made sure it was still in her hand.
You're sure it was this book, The Lion's Pride, that the victim was holding?
Oh, yes, sir. No doubt about it, sir.
Interesting.
I thought it was an open and shut case at the time, you see. There were only 2 people at the scene, and Pat and me both saw what happened. However which way you look at it, it had to be the fellow who ran off and done it, I thought. I couldn't see the harm, really. I didn't think moving it all over to the road would make a jot of difference. I suppose this is it for me now, then. I've had it.
My lord.
Yes, Lord Van Jykes.
I believe that concludes the cross-examination of the witnesses. Constable, you may withdraw.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Prosecutor, sir. What will become of my Rolly? What will happen to him?
For now, you are free to go home. The police will contact you in due course.
Please, don't punish my husband. This was all my fault. It's because I'm always moaning at him for coming home late.
Leave it now, Pat. Let's go home. I'm tired.
All right then, my love.
One last thing, Constable.
Yes, sir?
Let this be a lesson to you. In a criminal investigation, every detail matters, however insignificant it may seem to you.
Yes, sir.
Carve that lesson in your mind. And never again make the mistake of tampering with the scene of a crime.
Huh? Never again, sir. You mean to say?
Leave. Now, this trial is not yet over.
Sir!
He gets off scot-free. God damn it.
Quite a startling revelation, I must say. Who would have thought of a third party transplanting the entire scene of a crime like that?
Indeed, my lord. Nevertheless, there are some immutable facts here. Principle. That the accused, Mr. Saseki Natsumi, is the only person who could possibly have committed this crime.
Objection!
No, I disagree. Now that we know the true scene of the incident, there is someone else. Another person who could be responsible for the knife in the victim's back.
Forgive me for being presumptuous, but I believe the prosecution is probably well aware of that possibility already. Lord Van Jykes, is this true? Very well. Name the person if you will, and if further investigation is warranted. The prosecution has no objection to the trial continuing. Who named this other person who could have perpetrated the crime?
No, she's the only one who threw shit. It's gotta be Joan.
Take that!
The defense would once again like to request the cross-examination of a new witness, my lord.
Which again?
My assistant made the same request earlier. In order to finally reveal the truth about this case, it's imperative that we cross-examine juror number 4, Mrs. Joan Garadeb.
Me? Oh, dearie me.
Objection!
That request has already been denied.
Objection!
But the situation is very different now. Mrs. Garadeb, answer me this.
What do you want now, you little toad?
At the time of the incident, you were engaged in a violent argument with your husband, Mr. John Garadeb. In the course of the argument, a minor house fire was ignited. And to clear the smoke from the room, your husband opened a window that looked out over Briar Road.
Well, what of it?
You threw this book at your husband when he was cornered with his back against the window. Upon striking the pane of the open top-hinged casement window, the book plummeted directly down, finding its way to what we now know to be the true scene of the incident.
Yes, and as I said, what of it?
During the argument, you were beside yourself with rage. As such, you threw not just books, but anything you could lay your hands on. So, let me ask you one more time, Mrs. Garadeb. This knife, the one removed from the victim's back, have you really never laid eyes on it before?
I don't recall it.
Seriously.
Am I supposed to remember everything I picked up and threw at my husband? And anyway, the man over there is and all that regalia said members of the jury didn't testify, didn't they?
Conveniently, yes.
Objection!
No, I have no recollection of saying that at all, juror number 4.
Oh!
Make no mistake, you jurors are not special in any way. You are not immune to the judicial process. If you know something about this knife, madam, let the truth come out.
But that's just a common or garden knife. It could have come from anywhere. We have several knives like that at home. If one went missing, how would you expect me to know?
What's that? Are you joking?
What are you saying? Please, Mrs. Garrett. Now you listen to me. I refuse to believe all this nonsense. I couldn't bear the thought that I'd injured someone. Do you hear? I couldn't bear it.
Oh, the poor woman.
So, yes, I want evidence. I want to see hard evidence if you're going to insist that this being my fault. You're going to have to prove to me that I threw that knife, if that's what you think. Come along now, chop chop, do your worst.
Well, Miss Naruhodo, if I had evidence like that, believe me, I would have thrown it at her already. Then take the stand, juror.
Oh!
The prosecution does not object to the defense's request to cross-examine this woman. Thank you, Lord Van Zykes.
I'm gonna have to testify.
Try number 4.
As I'm sure you appreciate, having observed it with your own eyes today. Witness testimony can lead to the most extraordinary truths being unearthed. Truths of which the witnesses themselves may not even have been aware. Oh, dearie me. So I demand your full and unadulterated testimony, Mrs. Garrett. And mark my words, in this court of law today, we shall extract the truth. Do you concur, counsels?
Certainly, my lord. Oh, that's what I'm hoping for, my lord. This is such a strange feeling. For the first time since arriving in this country, it actually feels real. I'm here, in the Old Bailey, and I'm a lawyer. Witness, state your name and occupation.
Oh, yes, my name is Joan Garrett, and I'm a juror, and such like.
It sounds like even she doesn't know if she's a housewife, or a maid, or what anymore.
Society, your testimony is required in order to clarify matters in this case. Do you understand, madam? Yes, my lord. My lord.
You will tell the court everything that took place in your household on the evening in question. And I warn you, do not attempt to hide the truth.
Oh, dearie me.
Chin up, Joni. Nothing to worry about now. Yes!
Oh, I didn't know you were here, John.
Wasn't only you in the room that day, old thing, was it? Rather think I ought to testify as well, don't you?
But what about your knee, dear?
Don't you worry about that. Hardly notice it. I'm not that sort of chap to leave a comrade to face disciplinary action alone.
Oh, John. I presume you're Mr. John Garrett.
Yes, sir. Former second lieutenant of the 3rd Regiment of the 4th Northumberland Fusiliers, sir. Seen my fair share of action and now living the quiet life, as it were.
The quiet life. Were you not engaged in an incendiary battle with your spouse on the day in question?
Well, yes. Quite.
I believe this may represent a first in the proud history of the British court. Calling a juror to the witness stand is unprecedented. However, the court will hear your testimony now, juror number 4, and that of your husband. You will recount clearly and precisely the events in your home at the time of the incident in question.
Sir, at once. Yes, on the day you're referring to. The wife and I did have a bit of a skirmish. Can't recall the reason now. Knocked the candlestick over and set fire to the carpet. Soon had it out, though. Got the window open.
Meanwhile, I was picking up whatever I could find to throw at him.
Plenty of knives around our place. Can't say I noticed if 1 or 2 went missing, I'm afraid. That volley thing in the victim's back really was one of ours. You'll have a job proving it, I think.
3?
It sounds as though it was quite the battlefield in your household that evening.
Although, an entirely one-sided assault, it seems.
The enemy caught us on the hop, sir. Had no choice but to dig in and take defensive measures. To be honest, if the enemy had kept shelling us for another minute, we'd have been toast. Of course, a veteran such as myself is only too aware that on every battlefield, you're just a gnat's whisker from death at any moment.
Are we still talking about a marital quarrel here?
Well, I must say, I'm dubious that this testimony will shed any light on the origins of this jackknife.
In combat, one's focus narrows such that surroundings are barely noticed. These witnesses may not be able to offer anything more than they have testified already. This may be a dead end.
And Zykes may well be right.
Well, whatever the chances, you only have this last cross-examination to uncover the truth, Miss Naruhodo.
Yes, I'm afraid so.
Very well, Counselor. Begin your cross-examination.
Well, bringing up the coral won't really mean anything. The fire to the carpet soon went out, window open. That's also, we don't really need to do anything. Meanwhile, I was picking up whatever I could find to throw at him.
Hold it!
Even though the room was on fire?
As far as I was concerned at the time, it was more important to extinguish my anger than the flames. When a woman wants to throw, she must throw.
That is most certainly not true of Asato's takedown, Miss Naruhodo. How did she know I was thinking that? So, please cast your mind back and try to remember. Was a knife among the items that you threw at your husband that day?
No, honestly, I don't recall. But I feel I must point out that I'm no monster. Let me see. Some bread, cabbage, garlic, towel, a
By
sponge,
Jupiter!
a napkin.
Excuse me!
Do you have something to add, sir? Mr. Garadeb.
Don't shoot! Sorry, I beg your pardon?
Did your wife's remark just now bring something to mind?
Nothing of any significance, no.
Is that barrage projectile field thing launched in my direction was somewhat more solid than she implies. Hooks, bricks, and the fire poker I seem to recall. Ouch. And the woman's aim is uncanny. She delivered a hit every volley. Ow!
Good grief, woman, we're not at home now. This is a court of law.
Oh, dearie mate. I'm so sorry, dear.
What's she even doing with a teapot here?
Honestly, June, I would never have done such things at you, obviously.
Well, take a look at this then. How do you suppose this happened,
A pipe shit.
Had this thing in my hand, as usual at the time of the onslaught. Knocked it clean out with one of her soft projectiles, she did. Yes. And when I went to pick the thing up, it was broken in two. I like to see a sponge do that sort of damage. I see. Your pipe was broken. It would never have been sent flying unless it was hit by something pretty solid. Anyway, I managed to bandage the thing up for now.
Ah, you want to exaggerate, aren't you, dear?
I wonder what we should make of this account. It could be important. The defense believes Mr. Garadeb's remarks just now to be of great significance.
Objection!
This war veteran's words only tell us one thing. Betray a fiery wife, and pipes, as well as hearts, may be broken. Sentimental wisdom, perhaps, but hardly worthy of adding to the formal testimony.
Indeed. Common sense, one might say.
Might one?
In that case, would you at least permit us to examine the pipe, sir?
Well, I don't see why not.
Oh, dearie me. There you go again, trying to incriminate yourself with a young lady. Very well. The court will accept the gentleman's pipe as evidence.
Alright, I'll have a look at that.
I hope I didn't speak out of turn, Miss Naruhodo.
I didn't think about sampling this thing. No. Oh, something just twinkled inside the chamber of the pipe there. That's the end of the knife! Oh!
Yes, I saw it. Something stuck in there, I think.
Let's turn it over and give it a shake. What's this?
It's a tiny fragment of metal. It looks like the tip of a blade or something.
The tip of a blade? Surely, couldn't it be? Well, well, well. This is the tiny piece of metal we found in the chamber of Mr. Garadev's pipe. It looks like the tip of a blade or something. The tip of a blade?
Is something wrong, Miss Naruhodo?
I don't really know. There's just something niggling me, but I can't quite put my finger on what it is.
Perhaps in that case, it would be wise to examine some of the other pieces of evidence again.
Ah, there we go. Alright, let's go back to the knife. Open that bad boy up.
Oh, look here, Miss Naruhodo. Just at the tip. A small piece of blade appears to be missing.
Wait, part of it's missing?
Could be wrong, but I've just got a feeling.
You remember this?
Ah, that's the tiny fragment of metal that we found inside Mr. Garadev's pipe.
Yes, and just maybe.
Oh my! It's a perfect fit!
Somehow I just knew it. How interesting.
I was just feeling rather disappointed for you that your request was turned down.
Oh no, it's fine. Thanks to Sasada-san, we have some new evidence to work with. We should examine it carefully. Just did.
Well, thank you for that. Rebuttal, Mr. Garadeb. Now, if we can return to the crux of the matter. What can you tell the court about the knife used to attack the victim?
Can't really say that. If that volley thing in the victim's back really was one of ours, you have a job proving it. Oh, I have an easy job proving it. Fragment of metal.
Objection!
I can prove it all right. Mr. Garadeb, could I ask you to take a good look at this, please? You can ask, but I can't see a bally thing. You can't? Used to call me Dead-Eyed Deb back in the regiment, of course, but that was some time ago now. Even when I'm trying to enjoy a large print book by the fire these days. I struggle to tell a B from a D and a P from a Q, to be honest.
Oh, he does, dearie me. It's rather wearing, being asked about every other letter in every other word.
You must be very dusty. What is that? A tiny scrap of metal? Yes, almost certainly from the tip of a blade. And what may appear to, at first to be a tiny scrap is in fact a crucial piece of evidence. Interesting. And where did the defense come by this evidence? It was lodged in the chamber of Mr. Garadev's pipe. My pipe, you say? By Jove, I wonder how it got in there.
What precisely does this fragment of metal signify, Counsel? Are you suggesting that this is in some way related to the matter of the stabbing on Briar Road?
You're slapping yourself, dude. Everyone's paying attention. I am. What? When put together with another piece of evidence already in the court record, I believe this tiny fragment of metal will unravel the whole truth of this case, my lord.
You appear rather confident in that extraordinary statement, Counsel. Very well, then. Present the pertinent evidence to the court. What evidence, when paired with this fragment of metal, allegedly reveals the truth?
The jackknife.
Take that!
This is the knife that we found, that was found in the victim's back. If you look closely, you will see that there is a small piece of the tip at the blade that is missing. The common issue with the inferior blade sold at unsavory street markets. Criminals who use them regularly leave the tips lodged in their victims' bones.
And what of this particular knife?
No doubt its tip has suffered a similar fate, now languishing somewhere near the spine of the victim.
Objection!
No, that's not the case. The tip of this particular knife's blade is the very fragment of the metal we discovered in the chamber of Mr. Garrideb's pipe.
Good grief, Lord Van Sykes.
I don't believe it. The knife from the crime scene and this fragment of metal are a perfect match.
Good golly gosh. Order! 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 Is this some sort of Eastern sorcery?
This is no magic, my lord. This is a miracle.
A miracle?
So Van Zykes has figured it out, has he?
How so? Explain this extraordinary coincidence at once.
Yes, my lord. The crucial point we have to ask ourselves here is, when did the fragment of metal find its way inside Mr. Garrideb's pipe?
Something that was clarified for us in the most recent witness testimony.
Had this thing in my hand as usual at the time of the onslaught. Knocked it clean out with one of her soft projectiles, she did, yes. It would never have been sent flying unless it was hit by something pretty solid. Oh, dearie me. During the argument between the two that occurred just as the victim was on the pavement below, when Mrs. Garrideb flung this knife at her husband. However, the knife missed Mr. Garrideb, instead striking the pipe in his hand at the time, which caused the tip to break off, of course.
Good Lord!
Yes, and that is when the tiny tip of the blade found its way inside Mr. Garrideb's pipe. The chances of that are millions to one. And yet, there's no other credible explanation for how the tip of the blade ended up in your pipe. Then, after losing its tip, the knife ricocheted off the pipe and flew out of the open window. In short, this knife, which fell from the window of the Garrideb's house, is the very same knife that struck the victim in the middle of the back on the street below.
Oh gosh! Oh dear! Oh! No!
Oh.
Objection!
Oh, I thought he was on my side this time. I thought he was on my side. A full-bodied theory, I'll give you that. A complex bouquet of seemingly trivial points, plausibly arranged to create an almost passable vintage. Allow me to toast my learned friend's characteristically Nepalese approach to bottling his argument. Sorry? But after all, it is just a theory. A game theory, I'm sorry. The bottle, I fear, is corked. Because you see, it is spoiled by an insurmountable inconsistency. An insurmountable... What?
Lord Van Sykes, explain yourself! What is this inconsistency you claim to have identified?
Inconsistency of the simplest nature, my lord. The victim was found with the knife planted in the middle of her back. Yes, in her... Ah!
That's right, you silly little man!
Now, Joan, oh thing, what are you getting so excited about? Let us consider the basic facts of the case once more. The victim was walking along the pavement before being stabbed in the back and falling to the ground. If the knife that struck her had fallen from above, there's no possible way it could have planted itself into the victim's back. Yeah!
Order! Order! Quite right, you see. That's exactly right. If the knife fallen on her from above, that would have struck her on top of her head.
lost for words. Look,
I knew it. I never liked his theory in the first place.
I don't know, though. What really did happen?
It would appear the defense made rather a spectacular blunder.
If a theory has even one inconsistency, it cannot stand. Your theory, my learned friend, is history. Oh, we're doing a Phoenix thing. Let's go. We were so close. I could see the truth. I was so sure we were on the right track. But now the way has been blocked completely by just one simple inconsistency.
Or in other words, we simply need to eliminate that one inconsistency. The theory will stand.
Mrs. Sato,
You mustn't worry, Miss Naruhodo. You were just caught off guard, that's all. And your mind went blank. But if the path you were on is indeed correct, then a way will present itself. The key to this is in the court record, I'm sure. All the information you need is there.
ugh. It seems you have nothing to say, my Nepalese friend. Well, your silence speaks volumes. Tactic acceptance that your theory is fatally flawed. Objection!
Objection!
There it is. Get up. This inconsistency doesn't mean I was on the wrong track. It means that I need to sharpen my mind and dig deeper for the truth. The test. Yes. If the knife fell on the victim from above, there's no way it could have hit her in the middle of her back. Under normal circumstances, that is. What are you implying? Counsel? There is a piece of evidence in the court record that can explain this inconsistency. That can explain how the knife that fell from above could have pierced the victim's back. We already have that answer.
Goodness!
Utter madness.
Surely this mustn't be the last.
Counsel, present the evidence of which you speak. This is the last inconsistency, the final piece of the puzzle. If I can successfully make sense of this, the truth will be laid bare at last. The evidence that explains how the falling knife became lodged in the victim's back. This book.
Take that!
This, the fourth book found at the scene. This is the final piece of evidence the defense will present. The burnt book.
You said not Mr. Garadep's book.
Yes, and to understand its significance, we have to consider how it came to be at the scene in the first place. This photographic print clearly shows the book in question, and the victim holding it in her hand. But as we all know now, it was the police constable that put the book between her fingers like that.
Quite so. As part of his wholesale transplanting of the crime scenes to the opposite side of the road.
That's true. However, as part of his testimony, Constable Beat made an extremely enlightening statement on that point. But what made you place that book in the victim's hand?
Oh, well, sir, that's because that's how I found it. When we first ran over to the scene, the victim was already holding the book. So, when I moved everything, I made sure it was still in her hand.
In other words, the victim had already picked up the book on her own volition. And clearly, that must have been before she suffered the knife wound.
Well, I should say so. After being attacked with a knife, I don't imagine she'd been doing much of anything.
So, the question becomes, why did the victim have that book in her hand?
Why, Chingo? I think I'm beginning to see what may have happened now.
Oh, dearie me!
We know that the book fell from the top floor of the Garadep household onto the pavement below, and precisely the moment that the victim was walking past. Yes, at exactly that moment. The young woman was walking along the street in the light fog, and when all of a sudden, a book fell right in front of her.
The book I threw.
Yes, Mrs. Garrideb, and what do you think the woman did? What would you if you were walking along and suddenly a book landed in front of you on the pavement?
Well, I really can't imagine it, but I suppose she might have reached down and picked up the book.
Yes, that is exactly what the woman in fact did. She picked up the book.
Oh heavens!
And when the woman reached down to pick the fallen book up, what position would her back have been in? That's right, facing the sky, completely and utterly defenseless. Then, in the very next moment, while the woman was still bent over picking up the book, the next object fell from the room above, the jackknife, straight into the middle of her back. And at that same time, walking by chance directly behind Miss Green, was the defendant, Mr. Soseki Natsume.
Well, I never.
It appeared to Mr. Natsume that the woman simply collapsed on the floor. In the dark, in the fog, he didn't see the knife falling on her from above. And from the other direction, the constable and his wife saw no one but the victim and her apparent attacker. There never really was a real culprit to run from the shame in the first place. No, that was nothing more than a series of unlikely events that culminated in an unfortunate accident. And that is the real truth behind this case. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Garrideb,
Very first time you showed me that knife, I had my suspicions. I wondered if perhaps it might have been something like that.
There, old bee.
poor Mrs. Garrideb.
Of course, I never meant for anything of the sort to happen, but it was all my fault, wasn't it? I take full responsibility. I let my anger get the better of me. I threw that book, and I threw that knife as well. John, dear.
It's alright, I know.
I'm ever so sorry. Truly. I'm sorry!
Oh, now he's holding. Oh, she's heavy. Yeah. And he's old. You can't hold her like in the wedding photo. Oh no, just sit down, dude. Just sit down. Or you can fall back. That works too. So, case closed?
Northern Sights, what news of Mrs. Garrideb?
She's been taken to the infirmary. It would appear that today's events have left her in an extremely flustered state. However, I believe she will recover in due course. There is no cause for concern.
Yes, unbeknownst to themselves, they caused what could have easily been a terrible tragedy. They shall have to prepare themselves for the consequences of their actions.
There is some good news, however, my lord. I have just heard word from the hospital where the victim was being treated. Her condition is improving steadily, and the doctor believes she will regain consciousness soon. It's strange. We've been talking about the victim all this time, but we've never once met her.
How wonderful. The woman is out of danger, it seems.
Yes, that is good news.
So, Mrs. Soseki Natsume.
Oh, he's back.
Yes?
On behalf of my fellow countrymen, I would like to take this opportunity to beg your pardon, sir. You came from your own distant eastern homeland to study our great British culture, and have been repaid with immeasurable unkindness. Please accept our heartfelt apologies.
No, it is me who should be begging your pardon. Oh no, Mr. Natsume. That evening, the young woman just collapsed on the pavement before my eyes. I jumped to the wrong conclusion again, in my confusion.
What conclusion, sir?
I was sure that the woman was dead.
Yes, Constable Beat said the same thing, didn't he? He thought she had been killed too.
I suppose she must have looked completely lifeless. It had been about a year since I arrived in Great Britain now, but I still can't get used to life here. I can't relax. I'm sure there are evil spirits lurking in the fog, like they're haunting me. Poor Saseki-san. His imagination really has gotten the better of him.
Yes, poor man.
So when it happened, I thought the young woman had been taken by the fog spirits. I should never have dropped my books like that and run away. I should have gone for help, for a doctor, for the police. Instead, I managed to create a rift in the relationship of trust between our two empires. And for that, I am truly sorry. Mr. Garadub is now taking place with her.
One could indeed say that some sort of mischievous spirit has been at work here, I think. One that created a chain of unfortunate mishaps. You would be fooled by this spirit and led to false conclusions. But thanks to Lord Van Zykes and our young lawyer here from the east, that chain has now been broken, and the spirit exorcised. I hotly commend you both.
Oh,
Now then, ladies and gentlemen of the jury,
Yes, my lord.
in concluding this trial, I must ask one last time for your decisions regarding the defendant's culpability. Are you ready to present your findings to the court?
As the foreman of this jury, I can assure you we've reached a fair and just conclusion.
I do declare the truth to be extremely cruel at times.
well, I didn't suspect the woman next to me, that's for sure. Sitting in for the old bean while she's out of action, you know? If I know what her decision would be.
Does this mean I'll finally be able to get out of here and start work? Well, it's about time.
I say, I'll have to have a corker of a story to tell the grandchildren when I get home, won't I?
Very well, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. I hereby demand your final decisions. Mr. Foreman.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
Yes, we did it!
Woohoo! Very well. Mr. Saseki Natsumi, I hereby pronounce you not guilty.
Oh my god, we've been doing this for 2 hours.
Woo! Fireworks inside the courtroom! Not the best idea! And finally, Mr. Natsume.
Oh, yes, Lord, sir.
You are now a free man once more. It is my hope that you will continue to further your education in British culture. And may you never again be brought before me.
Oh, yes, sir, of course. On my life, I swear I'll never set foot in a courtroom again. That's what it took years.
Thank you, counsels. Court is adjourned.
All right. 20th February, 3:17 p.m. The Old Bailey. Defendant's Antechamber. Oh, Locum. Wait, you mean me? Of course!
Is there another locum here?
Is there even one?
Compared to the original locum student, Mr. Naruhodo Esquire, your name has become rather short, hasn't it?
What's wrong with using my actual name?
Oh, at last.
Oh, sorry, it's Soseki.
Oh, at last. I'm free. I'm free. Joyful, joyous, jubilant, jubilation. Beauty, party, happiness, hurrah. Oh, I'm pleased. Miss Natsumi's delighted.
Would it be so hard just to say that then?
Welcome. You did it. You saved me from the brink.
Well, what happened to the poor woman was in no way your fault after all. I'm just glad everyone can see that now.
No, no, no. Not that. Lovely, loyal, locum, lawyer.
Yes?
I mean, as I said before, I've just never gotten used to life here in Great Britain. Every time I look over my shoulder, I see foreigners. I see towering brick buildings. And from high up windows, I see them looking down on me, laughing. Look at that little hunchback. Oh dear, I'm sure it's all in your head, Mr. Natsumi. But today, you, Welcome Lawyer, gave my gloom the boot. You stood firm behind that barrel bench before all those babbling British. You battled to the bitter end, laying bare the baffling truth. And when I beheld the blinding fireworks among the beams of the Bailey's roof, I bellowed, "Behold the best barrister ever born!"
Well, that's very flattering, and we're very pleased for you.
This has given me a wonderful anecdote to recount my old friends back in Japan.
An anecdote? Is this what's to become of all my hard work?
Ah, there you are, my dear fellows. I apologize for keeping you waiting. I rose late this morning. Oh, Mr. Sholmes, what a pleasure to see you. I am here not a moment too soon. A disaster has been averted, I'm glad to say. Oh! The trial shall begin presently, Miss Naruhodo, and I wish you the very best of luck.
It's just finished.
What? No! Then my haste was in vain? Ah! It's you! Hairlock Sholmes! Oh, how we met, sir. This is Mr. Natsumi, the man who had arrested Mr. Sholmes. Ah, I see. I failed to recognize you at first. Our previous encounters have taken place in the gloom. Either of your bleak lodgings or in that prison cell. I simply couldn't place that curious face in the light.
Charming.
This is all your fault, Hairlock Sholmes. You're the reason I had to go through this terrible ordeal. I'm going to give you a piece of my mind. My apologies, sir, but I assure you, I have placed you now. You're the fellow who abandoned that poor young lady and ran off, are you not? Has she been taken to the hospital more urgently? I feel perhaps she would have regained consciousness by now. Oh. But it was unavoidable, I'm sure. We are but human after all. Anyone would have been shaken by such an experience. I do feel very badly about how I behaved. Well, never mind. Now then, what was it that you wanted to say to me, sir? Nothing. Priceless. Oh, I'm so sorry. Really, but that was quite priceless.
Poor Soseki-san.
Still, on the bright side, you've had an extremely entertaining experience without paying a penny. And it would seem you were not even found guilty. But there's no bright side. Whatever do you mean, Mr. Natsumi? Even after this, I'm still cursed by the spirits and now by the Reaper.
Ah, Lord Van Zykes.
I haven't forgotten, what facing that man in court means. Even if you're found not guilty, you're still doomed!
It will be all right, Mr. Natsumi.
Hmm?
If the Reaper appears trying to make trouble, I will protect you. Hiya!
Oh boy, Sasada takedown.
The perfectly executed Sasada takedown.
Much as I like being turned on my head, a bit of a warning might be nice next time, Miss Sasato. So, Miss Natsumi, what do you tend to do now? You mentioned something about recounting your experiences to your friends back in Japan.
Yes, I intend to return to my homeland soon.
Oh,
It has already been a year since I arrived here in Great Britain. I visited universities, libraries, bookshops. I've been honored with the tutelage of professors. I've learned so much about the world of literature here, and the city it has shaped. And I've come to realize that it is my calling to sail home and tell my fellow countrymen about it.
that's very touching, Mr. Natsumi.
Or, in perhaps less violent terms, you wish to withdraw halfway across the world to escape the terror of the Reaper's curse.
That's not it at all! The more I learn of literature, the more this strange feeling crawls at my insides. I feel compelled to return to my roots and attempt to pen a work of my own.
Oh, I see. A work of literature by Saseki-san. Could be an interesting read. And what about Miss Sasato and yourself, Miss Naruhodo? Sorry, what about us? Will you return to Japan along your mustache compatriot? Why would we?
A week has not yet passed since we arrived in London. And only now does it feel as though we've finally found our feet.
And you are accommodated in a hotel at present, are you not? That's right, but we need to find lodgings before it bankrupts us.
I've calculated we can only afford another 10 nights before our entire budget is exhausted.
Well then, you could take my lodgings.
Oh, the windowless room?
But what it lacks in windows, it more than makes up for with a floor, a ceiling, and walls.
Great.
And of course, I'm the entity behind the accursed evil spirit.
Oh my, an evil spirit!
Oh yes. It tries to suffocate you while you sleep. It's an infireable wake-up call.
We'll think about it, if that's alright. Perhaps I can offer a more welcome alternative. Would you consider taking lodgings with me? Oh, let's go! We get to be with Herlock Sholmes, let's go!
Really?
Well, a vacancy has conveniently presented itself. Though it is up in the attic, I might add. Are you sure it isn't just a storage loft? I spoke with the landlady this very morning on the matter of price, and Iris is cleaning the room as we speak. You must come at once. I presume you have no luggage to speak of?
Oh, this is simply wonderful. What an honor to be invited to take lodgings in the Great Detective's office's attic. I'm too overcome for words.
So suggesting we look elsewhere is out then. Then it's settled. Iris will prepare a welcome dinner this evening. And you must come too, Miss Natsu. I insist.
I don't know what to say, but thank you, and yes.
Wonderful. Then I'll go and complete the paperwork for your formal release, Mr. Natsumi. It shan't take long.
For somebody's happy. Please stop making me read his words.
Welcome. I knew that you would let me down. I'm truly delighted to have met you here in London.
Likewise, Mr. Natsumi. It's been a privilege meeting you too. It's a shame that we're gonna have to say goodbye so soon.
Well, I've come to realize that I belong in Japan. But welcome. We'll meet again one day.
Yes, I'm sure. Hopefully by then, I'll be a successful lawyer. Hopefully by then, I'll be a successful author. Well, my dear fellow, our carriage appears to have arrived. Shall we go, Miss Naruhodo? Yes, Mr. Sholmes. I have little doubt Mr. Natsumi will be released in time for dinner this evening. So, with Saseki-san's innocence successfully established, we rode with Mr. Sholmes to what was to be our new home, 221 B. Baker Street. Alright, I'm guessing a cutscene. Oh, no, well, fuck it! The cutscene! Ah, fun. There's garlic up here. Very nice. So this
Is to be our new office, yes.
our office? I'd rather like the sound of that.
Me too. It's simply wonderful, isn't it?
I hope you can see this, Cosmo. It's only a small step. But I'd like to think we're getting a little closer to your dream now. So, my dear fellows, do you like the place? Oh my god, you look cool. And that's saying it in a straight way. You look so cool without your jacket and hat on. Damn, I like this look better. Ah, Mr. Sholmes. Yes, thank you very much.
It's a delightful room, Mr. Sholmes. I simply adore it.
Good, I'm pleased to hear it. Iris and I are delighted to welcome you.
I hope everyone's hungry. It's nearly time for dinner. We'll eat as soon as Mr. Natsumi arrives. We'll have a lot to celebrate. Iris, you must let me help you. All right then, Susie. You can be in charge of the salad. Splendid.
I see. So, Miss Naruhodo, how does it feel to have your own office in the capital? It's very exciting, actually. I can't help wonder what adventures await us. Those were precisely my sentiments when I first established my office at these premises. Until I discovered the dark truth about the city of London, that is. Sorry? London is a glorious place, full of wonder, opportunity, prosperity, and mirth. But the brightest of lights cast the darkest of shadows. Shadows? What do you mean? Well, I believe you're well aware of the murkiness that lies beneath London's facade already. So, once again, Miss Naruhodo. Welcome to London. I'm guessing now that's it, right? Of course. At the time, I had no idea of the significance of those words Mr. Sholmes so casually spoke. But it wasn't long before my turn came to lift the facade and see the true depth of the murk that lay beneath it. Case complete? Yes, we are done, boys and girls! Yes, we shall save our current progress. This video has been 2 hours and almost 20 minutes. I am tired. The unspeakable story. Alright. Well then, I think this is where we're going to leave it off. Again, I am extremely sorry that I could not be able to give you the previous episode. I am extremely sorry. I hate OBS sometimes. I'm telling you that. And it's also part of my fault that I didn't create a backup save. Anyway, I'm sorry again. So, without further ado, we're leaving it off here. I hope you all enjoyed. Please subscribe if you haven't already for some more wonderful Ace Attorney content. And maybe a little bit more coming after, wink wink. We're almost done with this adventure, then we're going to move on to something else, and then maybe come back for the second story. Because we kind of need a break from Ace Attorney, or anything related to mystery. We might go XCOM again, who knows? But please leave a like if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.